Single parenting isn't easy. We understand. Most parents don't plan to go it alone, but you can still make the most of this journey for your children and yourself. In fact, if you and your family are on that journey, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Single Parent Advocate community and to our podcast. And here are your hosts, single parent founder Stacy Poitras, and broadcast journalist, single dad and friend, Daryl Moody.
All right, you found us. This is the Single Parent Advocate podcast. I am your host, Daryl Moody. I am joined again by Stacy Poitras. She is the Single Parent Advocate. She is in those beautiful, luxurious SPA Work Innovator Studios in Dallas, Texas. Venture X Louisville, the Realm at Castle Hills. We're also joined by Brent Ferguson, or Brent Sutcliffe, rather. You've seen him before. He is one of our favorite guests here that comes on the show. He actually has a Twitch channel, Rack TV, and has been using that Twitch channel to raise money for single dads. So Brent, thank you for joining us. And we have another guest, Kimberly Roush. She is a life coach. allstarexecutivecoaching.com is her website. She also is the author of a new book, Are You Ready to Be Big? So thank you, Kimberly, for joining us as well. So let's just jump right in. Father's Day was this past weekend. And I know, Stacy, you had a big event going on there with the Single Parent Advocate. Talk to us about what you were able to do for some very deserving single dads there in the Dallas area.
So it was really interesting. You know, I've kind of talked to you a little bit about this before. You know, a lot of single dads, you know, they really are silent heroes, and they don't really, you know, take too well to handouts, you know. So what we decided to do is just to honor them. And so we've got a couple of dads going to a water park with their kids. We've got some dads doing, you know, like going out to eat for steak, you know. So we just you know, had a completely different approach than we do at National Single Parent Day or even at Mother's Day. And it's largely just because, you know, when you talk to a dad, you know, they'll just very much just tell you, no, it's okay, you know, go help somebody else that really needs it. And I think that, you know, building up our dads, the ones that are raising their kids and showing up in their lives, you know, and really kind of hustling, you know, we want to show support for them. So we shared some love, and they were all astounded. They're like, oh, wow. What'd you do, Daryl? How was your Father's Day?
Well, you know, Sunday was not only Father's Day, it was also my daughter Elisa's 8th birthday. So I had to share the spotlight with her. So I'll be cooking my steak dinner next Friday night. I had to cook burgers and mac and cheese last night for my daughter, but we got to spend some time with my mom. Met her for lunch, and then you know, because it was Father's Day, I actually asked my kids if I could watch the final round of the U.S. Open, to which they obliged. So I got to spend some downtime watching some golf.
I would love, Brent, for you to jump in while we're on the Father's Day topic. I'm sorry for stepping on you, Daryl. What can you tell us about all of the egg crashing, pie smashing, gaming that's been going on to raise awareness for single dads?
Well, it's really because when you're twitching and gaming, people love that interactivity. It gives them a reason to be involved. And so my whole point was, hey, let's do this and come up with this idea, and they can watch me abuse myself on live interaction and maybe donate for the cause as well. So I've been smashing eggs over my head. I've been taking pies to the face. I have a whole like hot tub. There's a big hot tub thing on Twitch right now that everybody's making a big cahoot about. So a big thing is making up fun hot tub ideas. So I have we're not quite there yet, but I have a whole barbecue theme ready. So for
barbecue in the hot tub?
Well, there was one dude that took nacho cheese over the head in a hot tub.
Oh,
so I'm literally going to get into a hot tub full of bacon and baked beans and all that stuff. Nobody wants to get into a hot tub full.
Sounds really messy.
Yeah, I'm telling you,
it's been pretty messy back here in my office.
I would assume that's going to ruin your hot tub too, right?
Well, I mean, it's even more Texan than that. It's actually a little inflatable hot tub that you can fit into the back of a truck.
That makes me feel a little bit better. And Kimberly, how was your Father's Day weekend?
Oh, my Father's Day weekend was very contemplative. I just recently lost my father March 8th, and I actually thought yesterday was going to be really, really hard. But, you know, I planted some snapdragons and in honor of him over the weekend. And I ended up posting a post on Facebook early yesterday morning of just a bunch of wonderful pictures of him. And I have to say, I've been handling his estate, and I feel like I've dug into his life more in the past 3 months than I ever knew. And I actually, strangely enough, feel closer to him, doing this work for him. And I feel like he's ever present, which is really lovely. I thought it was going to be a very tearful day, and there was much more gratitude in it than anything.
My dad's in heaven too, and I kind of follow you there. It's like I just took a moment, paused, and remembered him, and thought about how he'd scold me if I made too much of that. So it was nice, and. But, Father's Day is always, I found, very emotional for all of us. For one reason or another, there's people that have great dad experience and people that have, not so great dad experiences and everything in between, and so I think.
Speaking of your dad scolding, can I interrupt you and share a funny story?
Of course.
Your audience will get a laugh out of this. So, because of COVID, we've been doing these weekly Zoom calls. And over all of the last year, I've seen more of my dad via Zoom than I had, ever. And he had some the skin thing removed, where he ended up having a very long scar, way more than he thought. It was just a little thing on his lip, and his whole face here was black and blue from it. And so we got on the Zoom call, and my brother saw it, and immediately, and we had no idea, there was any risk of my father passing at this time. And it was just a few months ago, to be honest with you. And my brother got on and saw it and melted down, just got really, really, really emotional, and said something about, Dad, I don't ever want to lose you. And my dad said, now, Rick, there's no use crying over spilt milk.
Dad is
Dad, I think you're more than spilt milk. But that was my
jokes.
dad. Always positive.
Yep. Well, Brent got a new family member this weekend.
I did. We had talked about it, and my kid has been asking for a dog for a long time. So it just so happened the cards fell that we got it yesterday on Father's Day.
And what's her name?
We went with Alethea.
Alethea.
Alethea. It's kind of a rendition of a Greek goddess.
It's beautiful.
Goddess, one of the two.
Well, Daryl, so we've kind of gone around the horn with Father's Day, and I really am super excited to have you, Brent, joining us. Thank you for all you've done. Your support really means a ton. And I wanted to tell everybody about, how I actually met Kimberly and why I want her to talk to our community. She was in a national networking group that I participated in during the pandemic. I have been new to that environment, but it was really a great thing. They're called C-Suite. And we made fast friends. Kimberly's got a program that really helps people in the business world, in this case, really kind of get to and through transitions. Her book is amazing. Who Are You When You Are Big? And I went through that book and her team's programs. And I thought, while all of us in America are, getting ready really to be put back into the workplace, whatever that looks like for you or for us, whether we're an entrepreneur, whether we're going back to work in a hotel, or we're going back into the office, or we're going, to something new. I thought it would be really good to bring you into the conversation, Kimberly, and just kind of share your insights, if you will. I mean, you just did an amazing job with our families here in Dallas, and then some of our volunteers were also very grateful for you. And we all wanted to hear from you and about, what would you have single parents or people in general really keeping at the top of their mind right now, and how can they follow you and all the things?
Well, fun. Yeah, you went through our Back in the Game program. And, I think as you're talking, there's a lot of people getting back in the game. And it might be in a lot of different ways. It might be, just re-entering the workforce. It might be starting a new job. It might be, putting kids in new schools or whatever, right? Just back in the game can be very broadly determined. But, my book, Who Are You When You Were Big, really came out of a question that my executive coach asked me. And I had just stepped out of Big Four public accounting, and I'd been a national partner in a global firm with resources at my fingertips. And I got promoted into this national role where, quite honestly, I felt out of my league. And I started working with a coach, and long story short, over a couple of years, he helped me see that the part of my job I loved was all about coaching and developing and mentoring, and particularly challenging and inspiring people. And I realized that I had tons of opportunity to do that in my work in public accounting, but it wasn't really my day job. It was kind of the how I went about my work, but the what of my work wasn't nearly as meaningful and fulfilling to me. And so I stepped out. And like I said, went from being this, global partner in a national firm to becoming Kimberly Roush, founder of All Star Executive Coaching, single woman entrepreneur. I was feeling kind of small. And I think we all have times in our lives when we feel smaller, right? Like something's causing us to doubt ourselves or question ourselves, or just not be fully alive and authentically who we are and all we're capable of being. And so naturally, I had a coaching session with my coach, and he said, "Excuse me, did you leave any part of Kimberly Roush at KPMG?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean?" And he said, "Did you leave your experience, your accomplishments, your strengths, your values, your gifts, your personality?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Well, who are you when you're big?" And that was the genesis. That was the question he asked me that changed my life, really. And that I've gone on to ask over, literally thousands of people, and had it change their lives as well.
Well, Daryl and I, we were talking about, all the changes in the media that is going on, all the restructures of companies. Daryl, I don't know if you, want to comment a little bit about your perspective about, how it's a little crazy right now in the workplace.
I mean, I work in media, and it's as volatile a time in my industry as I think I've ever seen. It reminds me more and more of 2007, 2008, and 2009, the Great Recession, the way, media companies are being forced to do more with less. And in many cases, some people are inevitably going to get pushed out. So, I feel like a message like Kimberly's is really important because, somebody like myself, I've been in radio for 14 years. If you sat me behind a desk and told me to work 9 to 5, I would be lost. I'm so far removed from that, that corporate 9 to 5 life. I don't know if I could go back, and I've thought about it before, if I were to leave my industry, what would I do? I mean, I feel like I could go and sell just about anything, but I mean, that's not necessarily what I want to do. So, it's important to understand who you are and what your strengths are and what you bring to your respective endeavor, whatever it is, whether it's accounting for KPMG or whether it's running a nonprofit or whether it's, having the most successful channel on Twitch. It's, you need to know who you are before you try to enter into any type of big effort. So certainly your message is going to resonate with a lot of folks.
Yeah. One of the things we have people do in the program is we have them to tap into the times in their lives when they were thriving. when they were on their game, energized, they couldn't wait to get up and go to work in the morning, or they stayed there late at night, losing track of time. And it's not the greatest accomplishment that comes from your head and feeds your ego that you think will impress somebody else. But those times when you're just flourishing and in that flow state, and think back to those times and come up with 5 or 7 times when you were absolutely thriving. And my entry point to figure that out, because I'll be the first to admit I was pretty ego driven in public accounting, but my coach kept asking me this question over and over and over. And, session after session would go by. I still didn't have the answer. And finally, one night I was in the office. It was really late at night. I was organizing a team for the multiple sclerosis bike ride. So I've been on the board of the National MS Society for our local chapter for, over 20 years. And I organize a bike team for the big 100-mile bike ride from Irvine to San Diego every year. And I looked at my watch and it was 11 o'clock at night. And I was like, oh, darn. I told my husband I'd be home an hour ago. And I looked at my calendar for the next day, and I had my coaching appointment at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, oh, I still don't have the answer to his question. And then I thought about it and I said, wait a minute, I'm here late at night. I don't want to leave. I'm totally engrossed in what I'm doing. But this was like this fun part of my job, right? Like this was this passion place of mine of challenging people. I got people who didn't even have bikes and got them to agree to ride 100 miles and raise money for charity. And, I was alive in doing that. And I thought, wow, is this what he's talking about? Because it didn't feel like work to me at all. And that was kind of my entree point. I finally had to say, I kept trying to think my way into it. I finally had to ask myself, wow, where else have I felt that way? And then all of a sudden, all these other stories kind of came up of times within my public accounting that I was doing something that I was, just thrilled with. And as I stood back and look across all those stories, that's where I was always coaching and developing and mentoring, and particularly challenging and inspiring people. Some big challenge I was throwing out in front of them, and then watching them rise. And what was so meaningful about it to me was seeing their faces in Mission Bay Park after they'd ridden 100 miles on a bike, and realizing that, wow, maybe I've opened their minds to where they might put barriers up for themselves, and to where they'll challenge themselves in the future as they move forward. And ironically, I did the same thing with work-life balance and public accounting with a program that I had done. And there was just several examples that really gave me the clues, that gave me the courage to become an executive coach and leave public accounting, set that big partner hat aside and jump in. So, and even so, I felt small when I did it. So having a coach is wonderful.
My question for you, Kimberly, is, how do you recall that enthusiasm that you have for one job when you're doing something that maybe is outside of your comfort zone? How do you approach that with the same enthusiasm and zeal as you do in your past career?
Well, first of all, I want to make sure it's something that has meaning for you and is, and by really looking back and reflecting and establishing, okay, what was meaningful about my work in each of those situations when I was thriving? There will be a common thread, I guarantee you. By identifying that, you can look at your current situation and say, does this feed me? And if it does, sure, there's going to be tasks and things that, that are not the funnest part of the job. But if you're giving yourself enough of the stuff that's meaningful for you, you become really resilient towards the other stuff. But another way to tap into that is, and sometimes it's just, you're in a bad mood that day, right? We have people write big statements. So who am I when I'm big? And, my coaching one starts with something, who am I when I'm big as a coach? I challenge and I inspire. I listen and I'm curious. I'm compassionate and empathetic. And it goes on and on, but I know who I am when I'm in that state of mind. And all big is a state of mind, right? So how do we allow ourselves to step into that state of mind on demand? As I was starting my business, I could choose to feel small and I wouldn't have gotten any clients whatsoever. Or I could just step back into being Kimberly Roush because every bit of me was still here. And when people write it out and articulate it, man, it makes it so much more accessible on demand, right? And most of the time, if you're struggling, you probably have some superpower strength you're just not using to look at the issue or whatever it is you're facing, right?
Brent, I don't know, do you have some input about your business experience and, kind of turning the corner as people are going back to work, and maybe a comment or any input about what Kimberly's kind of throwing out there for us?
Well, I mean, actually, there were a couple things that resonated just about being big that really made me think is, word this right. Like when nobody is watching, when nobody sees you for what you're doing, because we often can have this different persona in front of people because we want to present, we want to look our best, we want to be our best, but we can be this completely different person when nobody's looking, when there's nobody around. Like, are you big in those moments? That's what I'm getting from Kimberly, is when you're really hearing the whisper and the gremlin, is when nobody else is watching you. And you're right in the middle of, whether you're making a presentation or you're looking over your books or doing the things that really nobody is really going to see. Are you big in those moments, or are you going to let the gremlins kind of nitpick, because I can be either an introvert or an extrovert. Yes, I do content creation, but I own my own IT business full time, is what I do on the side. And the whole COVID experience wasn't too much different for what I do, just because people don't see us very much anyway. So we're often in the background, and everybody wanted to go home and work. So I mean, for what we do, we've done okay in COVID world. But still, it's still those same thoughts and those same struggles. Is, are you big when nobody's watching? And I've told my guys before, sometimes you're gonna go cry in the corner, get it out, and then go back in front of the lights and go back to work. But again, it's the question is where are you going to be big in everything you do, even when nobody's watching? It's kind of what I thought a lot about when she was talking, and I thought that resonated pretty well. It's just being big. And that's not just big in size, but big in spirit, big in motivation, big in fighting off the smaller battles that nobody's going to be seeing you fighting.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. And there's a little bit of a distinction. I'm, when I am big, who am I? How do I show up? What does that look like? Right. And some people, when they write their big statement, say, I'm big when, da 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 da, right? Which is kind of making it conditional upon, I'm only big if those conditions occur, or if I'm in that situation, or if I do that thing in that situation, right? As opposed to when I'm big, I just do, right? And so, you're talking about, are you big when you're in these, when no one's looking, right? Well, who are you when you're big when nobody's looking? What does that look like? What does that feel like? Right. What is that, and how do we get people to step into that? Because I agree, when somebody else is looking, it's really more about ego than it is about your soul.
Right.
Very well.
I would say that's even more so in men. Men care a lot about ego. So we're not going to be vulnerable when people are watching. Like, we're going to be like on our best, like Thor looking, pose and mentality, when we may look completely different, when we're vulnerable. And that's just being a guy, is we don't like being vulnerable at all. Right. It's all about the ego, all about the presentation. But I mean, again, it just goes back to, even when you're vulnerable, are you still going to be big? Mm-hmm. Whereas, I don't know. It says that's just what I'm thinking about a lot, just in my own life, because myself, I'll struggle a lot when nobody's looking. Am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decision? And so on and so forth.
Right.
I love it.
I think, I can't help but just kind of confess. I think about people going back to work, especially single parents. They had to come in and parent their children inside. Usually, they've got, there were a lot of single moms that were administrative people, and they didn't have enough computers or tablets in their homes to be able to share with their children. Their children used the school's devices. So there was a whole big bumpy situation going on with that. And then once that got resolved, then, it's how do I pay for the additional groceries? And okay, now I've got to go to Food Lines. Or then there were other, all of these different variables. And I can't help but think whether somebody is having to re-enter the workforce after being laid off, what a jab that is, like my husband, he got put on furlough, brought back, then he got let go, then he had to go find another job, and it just really monkeyed with his mindset. Well, both of our mindsets, we're both working a lot in the hospitality industry. And of course, that was one of the hardest hit. Right. And I guess, collectively, I just wanted to talk about it today with the idea of giving people some tools about, the right mindset, how to get access to really kind of hitting the reset button and going, okay, it's time to go back to work now. We may not ever look like we did before, and that may make us feel small, but how do we rise in our hearts, our minds, and our inside voices, like Brent was talking about, the gremlin, how do we, and Kimberly, I know you're the pro at this, how do we go back to work as a community well? And maybe I could just be quiet for a little bit and let you kind of coach us up.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a fun question for me. So I've been running a program for, 13 years that has worked with executives in transition, and we've served over 3,000 people. And, I like to say that they come in experiencing identity theft, right? Because in America, so much of our identity is our job title and the company we work for. And then all of a sudden we don't have that, or we're not happy with the one we have. And all of a sudden, like, our self-worth just drops away, and we lose our identity. And so I watched all these people come into this program kind of going through identity theft. And to be honest with you, my ego had been so tied up in that partner had at KPMG that when I started my own business, I was going through my own identity theft, right? And I realized, I had the benefit of a coach, thank goodness, but I just watched that phenomenon as people came into this 4-week program every time. And I helped them. The program culminates in writing a big statement. And, one of the big things we do is tap into those thriving moments that I was talking about before. And we play with those voices you just mentioned, and we learn how to knock down the bad one and amplify the good one. And then we write these big statements. And every moment of every day, we all have a choice to make. And we can choose to feel small, or we can just simply step back into being our most powerful selves, to being our fully empowered self. What I find is so often people are on this seesaw between their powerful self, their ego, and their powerless self, which is their insecurity. And it's really those two voices, right, that are battling it out. And which one's going to win? Well, I don't want either one to win, because I don't want you driven by ego, and I don't want you driven by insecurity. I want your empowered voice to rise. Not powerful, not powerless, empowered. And when we know who we are, when we are big, and we've actually written it out and articulated it, and we've got a piece of paper we can go read at any given point in time to try and re-tap into it, right? It makes it more accessible. So I really can just step in on demand. The other thing it does is it helps me recognize when I've fallen out faster. I'm more able to recover to it more easily. I'm able to stay there longer until I start living my life from this state of mind being my norm, rather than, I don't know about you, but I was on this seesaw of this ego and insecurity, this powerful, powerless, for a long, long time in my career. And to be able to fully emerge as your most authentic self with gratitude and humility.
Oh yeah.
It's not about ego. And have it be accessible to yourself. It's so empowering. And it comes from within. It's your strengths and your values and your gifts. Nobody or no situation can ever take it away, because it's in here. And when you recognize that you have that power, that you have that strength, that you have that gratitude for the unique combination of skills and resources that you have and that you bring to this world, and that you can step in at any moment. You're making a choice. And do I make the right choice every moment of every day? No. Does anybody?
You don't? Oh gosh. Daryl, do you make the right choices every moment of every day?
Oh, of course. Absolutely.
I knew you were going to say that.
It's so easy.
Wait, you're making me feel small.
One good call after another, man. It's what could go wrong?
Brent, I saw you starting to chime in there with you. Of course you do too.
I haven't mastered walking on water yet, but we're working on it.
Well,
the other thing about it is that I find when you're living in your big, most resourceful state of mind, first of all, everything's easy and effortless, but you're giving permission for everyone around you to do the same thing. And there's a ripple effect. And it's not just you and your family, it's your teams, it's your bosses, your board, your community, the people in line at the grocery store behind you who are having a bad day, right? It's contagious. Emotions are contagious. And when we're in this most resourceful state of mind, we're giving permission for other people to claim their authentic greatness as well. I like to say big, sometimes BIG, sometimes stands for believing in greatness, right? Not from an ego perspective.
Believing in your inherent greatness, your own personal. Yeah. And I think too, a lot of times, people, they don't just go through work transition that make us feel small. It can be life situations that make us feel small and, kind of knock us off our game. And it shows up in our work, right? It shows up either way. Something happens at work, it shows up in life. Something happens in life that shows up in work. I know it's happened to me. And it's a personal, I love what you said. It's so personal, like about our jobs and what we do. And one of the things that I really loved that I heard recently was, it's not just what you do, Stacy, or, insert your own name, and it's not just your business, but it's the woman or the person behind the business that really matters. And, people don't just buy from a business. They buy from teams. They buy from people they trust with their own interests and work, and so as we improve ourselves, I think you think about, okay, I need to work on resumes, I need to work on massive action, I need to work on make sure I have the right clothes, I need to make sure I am applying for X number of jobs every day, or I'm going to all the networking meetings, I can't miss one of them, and we push ourselves on all of these tangible things that we can think about, about going and getting back to work or ramping back up in work. And we don't start with our hearts. We don't start with our center point. And so all of that ends up being things that we do, but they're off kilter. They're off kilter because we're not true to ourselves. We haven't gotten time to look at, our hearts and where they really are. And I bet you, Kimberly, what your message is right now would be really so helpful to so many people. And I'd love, you to talk a little bit about the program. I know people can buy your book on, if you went to smile.amazon.com and selected Single Parent Advocate as your charity, then you could go and buy Who Am I When I Am Big on Amazon, right? But
yes,
how do people find you and how do you become their coach? And, if somebody really wanted to be in touch with your, maybe there's a path that's affordable for a single parent, or someone to kind of get involved and see if this might help them.
Yeah, there's several ways. Number one is, buying the book on Amazon and, not only is there's the paperback, there's also the Kindle version and the audiobook we now have. So those are even more affordable versions of the book, which is definitely fun. If you want to see what a big statement's all about, we're on Getting Too Big on Vimeo. And there's statements of people who have professionally recorded their big statements, which is super fun. You get a feel for what they feel like and sound like and look like. But we also have 10 in the book. So you've got some good examples in there. My website is allstarexecutivecoaching.com. And if you go to services, there's a couple different places there. Of course, all my services are listed out there, but some of the group programs I have are a little more affordable than the one-on-one coaching. And you talked about, affordability. My Back in the Game program is a 3-month group coaching program. Month 1 is more intense. And then there's follow-on programs for 2 more months, follow-on sessions. And it's 3 hours a week, every Tuesday morning from 9 to 12 Pacific. And it's a very robust, great way to help you slow down and reflect and get things right. I like to think of transition as a career coffee break. When you were working, and grinding and pushing boulders uphill and running on the hamster wheel, didn't you just wish you had some time off that wasn't spent, that wasn't
truly.
Yeah.
I wished I could go to the ladies' room some days.
Exactly.
Seriously.
I'm taking a night off without laundry.
Laundry.
Right? And people in transition actually have this wonderful gift, and using it really productively, as opposed to running away from transition, trying to fill a void, and you're not even looking at what you're running towards because you don't really know. Mm-hmm. Right? If you're just going through the motions and running to get out of this pain, what if you could embrace this, savor your coffee? And I like to say, go slow to go fast. Invest the time up front to figure out what you really want to go back to. If you had a choice to make a right turn in your career, not a left turn, not a wrong turn, but a right turn, what would that look like? If you go back to doing exactly what you were doing in the past, but now you are absolutely clear and you know why that's your passion or that's what's meaningful about that work to you, fantastic. But I want you going back in to the second half or third half or whatever it is in your career with that confidence and that knowing and that ability to not just be on autopilot on a job you picked, when you were 20 years old and just got out of college, right? Like, what do you really, people say, what do you really want to do when you grow up? What do you really want to do when you grow up?
I want to be a rock star.
Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
Speaking of rock stars, so the other thing that I have available is I do a monthly Livecast. It's every Wednesday morning, the first Wednesday of every month at 9 a.m. Pacific. And it's called Be Inspired and Grow. So Back in the Game is BIG, Be Inspired and Grow is BIG, all kind of a play on my who are you when you're big.
Yeah.
And we have people that will, what I'm really trying to do is build community. And so, all my former clients and program participants are part of that. Plus, if other people want to come, there's a small fee associated with an annual subscription, very affordable. But that gives you access to all the former sessions as well. But last month we had Mark Schulman, who is the drummer for Pink. And he was just amazing. And I scheduled him months ago, but I didn't know that Amazon special on Pink, the documentary,
right,
had come out like the week before he was going to be on my Be Inspired and Grow session. And he was phenomenal. Next month, I have Stephen Emile from the C-Suite Network, and he's talking very much on this same topic of how do we go back in intentionally? How do we re-engage intentionally? How do we bring what we want, not what we don't, and and reset a bit? After that, in August, I have Bob Berg, who is the author of The Go-Giver. Wonderful, wonderful short little read. I like to think of it as Who Moved My Cheese for Networking. It's a great book about relationships and focusing on giving rather than getting. So many of us to be go-getters. What's it mean to be a go-giver?
Yeah.
And how does that change everything? So super excited about that. I'm working on other guests after that. So pretty exciting stuff.
Well, Kimberly, thank you for joining us today. I know that this is on many people's minds. What does going back to work look like? What does good look like? And where do I even begin? It's just, there's so many, variables and questions, and it's certainly on all of our minds. And so thank you for what you do and what you have done for our community. And thanks for joining us here. And I just recommend anybody, get in touch with Kimberly. Read the book if you like, or listen on Audible, and just know that real change and real next steps start from within, and it's the hard work at front that makes us better, faster, stronger over time. I'm having to learn the same lessons.
But we make it easy. Hard work made easy.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have anything to add, Daryl or Brent. You guys,
I thought it was really good stuff. I mean, the message is simple. Who were you when you were big? You think back to a time in your life when you were achieving success or whatever it was you were trying to do. Try, like I said, recapture that enthusiasm for what you were doing. It's a great message and timely for sure. So thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So I'm going to encourage everybody to turn the corner with us and get ready to bless some kids with back to school supplies. Brent's going to be doing some more antics on, I'm sorry, I said Brent. That's my Texas accent.
Says Brent right there on the corner, so you're fine.
Anyway.
Yeah, the dad campaign, my goal was to go throughout the entire month. So that's going to go on till the end of June. And then, of course, Stacey and I are talking about future shenanigans.
We're going to have some fun. We're always having some fun. And, get ready to really jump on board with back to school. And thank you, Brett, for all you've done. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.